imagine, just for a second, waking up.
Okay.
But you aren't in your bed. You open your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Like raw earth, sweet grass, and this really sharp scent of ozone.
Right, like right after a lightning storm.
Exactly. And you realize you are lying on the grassy bank of a massive, impossibly wide river. You look down at yourself, and, well, you are completely naked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and completely hairless. But the crazy thing is, you're also in the absolute prime of your life.
Meaning what, exactly?
I mean, every ache, every scar, every sign of aging is just gone. You feel physically perfect, like you're maybe 25 years old again.
That sounds incredible, but I imagine the panic sets in pretty fast.
And oh, instantly.
Because the sky isn't the right color, right? And the stars are wrong.
Yeah, and the silence, it only lasts for a fraction of a second before the screaming starts. Yeah. You look around, trying to just make sense of this, and the real shock hits you like a physical blow. You aren't alone. Stretching out beside you, covering the riverbanks as far as you can see in both directions, are people.
Just endless crowds.
Billions of them. Waking up exactly like you, groping at the grass, crying out in, thousands of dead languages. And it's not just people from your neighborhood or even your century.
Right. It's everyone.
Literally everyone. You scramble backward, and you bump into a guy who looks like a prehistoric Neanderthal, violently thrashing in the dirt.
God, the sensory overload.
And you look to your right, and there's a woman wearing the bewildered, terrified expression of a 19th century aristocrat trying to cover herself. I mean, every single human being who has ever lived, loved, fought, and died on Earth is waking up right next to you at the exact same moment.
It is sensory overload on a cosmic scale. No wealth, no status symbols, no technology, just raw humanity, stripped down to its absolute essence. And they're suddenly thrust together into an environment that defies all known laws of physics, biology, and history.
It's an overwhelmingly visceral nightmare. Or, well, maybe a paradise, depending on how you look at it. And that is the staggering thought experiment that we are plunging into for today's deep dive.
I am so ready for this.
We are unpacking Philip Jose Farmer's 1971 science fiction classic, To Your Scattered Bodies Go. This is the book that launched the legendary Riverworld series and took home the Hugo Award for Best Novel.
An absolute titan of the genre.
Yes. And our mission today is to figure out why this monumental, deeply cynical study of human nature and ultimate survival stands shoulder to shoulder with the giants, like Asimov's Foundation or Herbert's Dune.
And even the title itself sets the stage for that chaotic, deafening resurrection you just described. Farmer actually pulled it from John Donne's Holy Sonnet 7.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the lines are beautiful but terrifying. It goes, "At the round earth's imagined corners, blow your trumpets, angels, and arise from death, you numberless infinities of souls, and to your scattered bodies go."
Wow. Numberless infinities.
Right. It perfectly frames the sheer physicality of this world, because this isn't some peaceful, ethereal afterlife with clouds and harps. This is a violent, confusing, intensely physical reclamation of the flesh and the ego.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I'm suddenly standing naked on a riverbank with 36 billion other people, my immediate question to you is, how do we actually handle this?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. If humanity gets a literal second chance at life, do we build a utopia? Or do we immediately tear each other apart?
Well, let's start with the physical mechanics of Riverworld, because the environment absolutely dictates the behavior here.
Right. The sources describe this setting as a single continuous river,
Yep.
10 million miles long, winding and looping its way across the surface of an entire planet.
Just mind-boggling scale.
Yeah.
And scattered along the banks of this endless waterway are these massive, mushroom-shaped structures called grailstones.
Okay, so the Grail Stone.
Yes, the grailstones are the absolute anchor points of this new existence. They are really the only reason humanity survives day one. When every person resurrects, they wake up with a grail attached to their wrist.
Like a literal cup.
Well, we need to be clear about what this is. It's not a wooden chalice from the Middle Ages. It's a highly advanced, indestructible piece of super science technology.
Got it.
When a person places their specific grail onto a depression on the grail stone at certain times of the day, there's this massive energy discharge.
Wait, pause. How does that actually work? Where is the food coming from? Are the stones, like, teleporting it from somewhere?
It appears to be a form of direct energy-to-matter conversion.
Like a replicator in Star Trek.
Very much like that. The stones tap into some unfathomable planetary energy grid. It reads the unique biological signature of the user through their specific grail, and it synthesizes exactly what they need.
So it's personalized.
Exactly. It fills the container with perfectly synthesized food. Steaks, vegetables, pure water, sometimes luxury items like tobacco or alcohol, and even basic necessities like a cloth or a tool. It is functionally the absolute end of resource scarcity.
Which is a complete paradigm shift for the human species. I mean, think about it. Almost every war, every geopolitical conflict, every terrible thing we've done to each other usually boils down to a fight over resources.
Absolutely.
Land, food, water, oil. Farmer drops humanity into a sandbox where your daily bread is literally guaranteed by alien replicators. You don't have to plow a field, you don't have to hunt, you just put your bucket on the rock, energy flashes, and boom, breakfast.
And on top of that, he removes the ultimate biological scarcity, which is time.
Right, because if you get killed on Riverworld, you don't stay dead. You simply resurrect, fully formed again at some random point along that 10 million mile riverbank.
It is a post-scarcity utopia combined with functional immortality. So by all classical philosophical metrics, this should be the dawn of universal peace.
You would think.
But here is where Farmer injects a deeply, profoundly cynical view of human nature. He proposes that even when you hand humanity eternal youth, endless food, and freedom from disease, we don't transcend our base instincts.
We just stay exactly who we are.
Worse, actually, we immediately default to our historical norm. Within days of the resurrection, we see the instant formation of violent tribes, the immediate resumption of cruelty, of slavery, and of bullying.
See, I have to push back on this dystopian framing. It feels almost too pessimistic.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, unlimited free food and no permanent death. Why does Farmer assume we wouldn't just chill out and build a paradise?
Because of the complete removal of consequence.
Okay, actually, that makes sense if you think about it like an unsupervised multiplayer video game.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Like if you've ever played something like a Rust or a Minecraft server where there are no moderators, you know exactly what happens. When there are no rules and the consequences of dying just mean you respawn back at a random beach, people don't sit around cooperating to build beautiful cities.
No, they don't.
They instantly start griefing each other. They steal, they craft crude weapons, they torture other players just for the psychological thrill of it. It's not necessarily that humanity is inherently evil. It's that without the finality of death, consequence completely evaporates.
That is a phenomenal analogy, and it perfectly maps onto the psychological reality Farmer constructs here. Because death is no longer a permanent end, life paradoxically loses its sanctity. It becomes incredibly cheap.
Right.
If you kill someone in Riverworld, you haven't destroyed their soul. You've just inconvenienced them. You forced them to respawn somewhere else. Therefore, violence becomes casual. The ultimate biological deterrent that keeps society polite, the fear of non-existence, has been ripped away.
And then you add that lack of consequence to the sheer cultural whiplash of the resurrection, and it's honestly a miracle anyone stays sane. Picture the communication barrier.
It would be impossible.
You've got a 12th century crusader waking up next to a 21st century accountant. You have ancient hunter-gatherers trying to negotiate space with Victorian socialites. The clash of morals, of languages, of basic hygiene.
It's chaos.
Total chaos. So if the world is full of immortal griefers from 1,000 different eras, how do you survive the first night? You'd need someone who doesn't care about societal rules, someone who is already a predator.
Exactly, which is why the character who immediately thrives, the lens through which we experience this madness, isn't a modern survivalist or a philosopher. It's Sir Richard Francis Burton.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are not talking about the 20th century wash actor who was married to Elizabeth Taylor.
No, definitely not.
But we are talking about the real-life, legendary, deeply controversial 19th century British explorer, geographer, and linguist.
Right. Burton is a brilliant choice for a protagonist because, in his actual historical life, he was a man of extreme contradictions. He was an officer in the East India Company. He famously disguised himself to sneak into Mecca when it was strictly forbidden to Westerners.
Right.
He translated the Kama Sutra and the Arabian Nights into English, and he was known for his mastery of over 24 languages and dialects. He was a quintessential outsider, a man who constantly pushed against the boundaries of his own restrictive Victorian society. So, when Burton awakens on the banks of Riverworld, he doesn't fall to his knees and pray.
No.
He doesn't cower in fear.
He is relentlessly, coldly pragmatic. He wakes up naked on an alien riverbank with a million screaming strangers, and his very first instinct is to scan the environment for a weapon.
What's business?
He grabs a heavy, broken branch. He assesses the terrain. He's violently proactive. And because he was a master linguist in his first life, he has a massive advantage.
Oh, yeah.
He immediately starts listening to the cacophony of screams, identifying language families, and trying to communicate to gather intelligence. He starts building a crew. And the crew he puts together, I mean, it genuinely sounds like the setup to a terrible joke.
It really does.
A Victorian explorer, a Neanderthal, the inspiration for Alice in Wonderland, a sci-fi writer, and an alien walk into a bar.
It does sound absurd, but this motley crew is a deliberate narrative laboratory created by a farmer. Let's look at the roster. We have Kaz, who is an actual historically accurate prehistoric Neanderthal.
Okay.
We have Alice Hargreaves, who was born Alice Liddell. She is the real-life Victorian woman who inspired Lewis Carroll to write Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Fascinating.
We have Peter Jarvis Frigate, a 20th century science fiction writer, and we have Monat Grautet, an extraterrestrial from the Tau Ceti star system.
Hold it. I want to pause on Monat for a second because his inclusion is wild. Humanity is resurrected, and there's just one random alien guy mixed into the batch.
Yeah, just one.
And as they get to talking, it turns out Monat was part of an extraterrestrial expedition to Earth in the early 21st century. And his group accidentally triggered a biological weapon that caused a mass extinction event, wiping out most of humanity.
Oops.
Seriously. So you're stranded in the afterlife, trying to survive, and you end up teaming up with a guy whose spaceship literally caused the apocalypse that sent you there.
It is the ultimate awkward alliance. But Monat's presence along the rest of the crew serves a very specific thematic purpose. Farmer is essentially putting history into a centrifuge.
A centrifuge.
Yes. He is spinning it at 1,000,000 miles an hour to test Thomas Carlyle's great man theory of history.
Explain the centrifuge analogy there. How does this test the theory?
Well, the great man theory suggests that history isn't shaped by broad sociological trends, but by highly influential, unique individuals, the great men, who, through their intellect, charisma, or sheer force of will, bend the world to their vision.
Okay, I track that.
By taking a massive historical figure like Burton, stripping him of his Victorian funding, his titles, and his weapons, and dropping him naked into an impossible, unprecedented situation, Farmer is testing the baseline of that theory. Do natural leaders inherently rise to the top, regardless of the era or the context they're dropped into?
And looking at how quickly Burton takes command of a Neanderthal, an alien, and a Victorian socialite, Farmer's answer seems to be a resounding yes.
Very much so.
But the friction within this group is incredible. You have Burton's aggressive, almost feral adventurism clashing constantly with Alice's deeply ingrained 19th century societal decorum. You've got Kaz operating purely on physical instinct. And then you have Peter Frigate with his modern 20th century liberal sensibilities trying to rationalize a world that refuses to be rationalized.
And Peter Frigate is where this novel crosses into wildly metatextual territory. The initials PJF match Philip Jose Farmer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Frigate is explicitly a self-insert avatar for the author. Farmer drops himself into his own fictional universe.
That's bold.
Psychologically, it's a fascinating exercise. Farmer was a massive admirer and a critic of the historical Richard Francis Burton. Here we have an author writing a scenario where he gets to hang out with, admire, and intellectually spar with his own historical idol in the flesh.
It's the ultimate fan fiction fantasy, but executed at a really high conceptual level. But think about what this specific blend of characters tells us about Farmer's view of human adaptability.
What do you mean?
Well, we think of ourselves today as the pinnacle of human evolution, right? But strip away our smartphones, our supply chains, and our air conditioning, and suddenly the 20th century intellectual is the weakest link.
That's true.
The 19th century adventurer, the guy accustomed to surviving malaria and navigating hostile foreign cultures without a map, is infinitely more equipped to handle Riverworld.
It's a sharp critique of modern insulation. Farmer is suggesting that the comforts of modern civilization have dulled our primal survival instincts. Riverworld, in its early days, is a brutal frontier. Burton is a creature of the frontier. Frigate is a creature of the library. But Farmer doesn't just let them rely on their historical baggage to survive. He introduces a mechanism to aggressively strip all of that baggage away.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the Grails don't just provide steak and water, they occasionally synthesize a substance the characters call dream gum.
Yes.
And this isn't just a recreational hallucinogen. It acts as a violent chemical truth serum. When they chew this gum, it bypasses the conscious mind and utterly destroys their inhibitions. All of Burton's repressed desires, Alice's polite Victorian conditioning, Friggate's modern moral posturing, it all just dissolves.
It is the ultimate destruction of the ego. The dream gum proves that civilization is essentially just a series of agreed-upon masks. You can dress a person up in the manners of their specific era, but what remains when the societal constraints are chemically wiped from the brain?
Just the raw animal.
Exactly. Farmer uses the dream gum to force moral ambiguity into the open, proving that our morality isn't an inherent trait, it's a luxury created by our environment.
I want you, the listener, to think about what would happen if you had to chew that gum right now, sitting in a circle with strangers. What polite lie are you telling your boss, your spouse, or yourself that would instantly evaporate? That's the terror Farmer is playing with.
It's deeply unsettling.
But this shared vulnerability forces them to bond. And once they are stripped of these inhibitions, they come to a terrifying collective realization. This isn't heaven. This isn't hell. This is an artificial construct. They are subjects in a grand, unfathomable experiment.
Someone engineered the planet. Someone manufactured the Grail Stone. Someone developed the technology to resurrect billions of people, seemingly just to watch what they do. And once Burton realizes he is a rat in a maze, his only driving motivation becomes finding the scientists who built the maze.
He needs answers.
But to find them, they have to travel.
Which brings up a massive logistical nightmare. How do you travel up a river that is 10 million miles long? You can't just hike it.
The scale of Riverworld is intentionally, aggressively mind-boggling. To give it some context, the circumference of the Earth is about 24,900 miles.
Right.
A 10-million-mile river means this planet's surface is essentially just this one meandering, zigzagging waterway that loops back on itself for eternity. Burton and his crew hypothesized that the answers, the architects of this place, must be located at the source, the headwaters. Thus begins a classic, almost mythological quest narrative.
It's an odyssey, but they need a push, a direction. And Burton gets one from a character he calls the Mysterious Stranger.
A great character.
This guy is cloaked, highly secretive, and drops a massive truth bomb on Burton. He claims to be one of the beings who built Riverworld, a group Burton dubs the Ethical.
The Ethicals, yeah.
But the stranger says he is a rebel, a rogue agent operating against his own people. He confirms Burton's worst suspicions. Yes, humanity is being monitored. Yes, there are ethical agents physically hidden among the resurrected humans. And if Burton wants the truth, he needs to sail to the Dark Tower at the absolute headwaters of the river.
This revelation completely shifts the narrative engine of the book. It pivots from a pure survival story into a cosmic conspiracy thriller. It gives Burton a tangible physical goal. So they do what humans do best when faced with an impossible distance. They engineer a solution. They begin constructing a massive boat out of giant bamboo, which is the primary flora growing along the riverbanks.
But wait, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
They don't have steel saws or power drills. They woke up naked.
Through sheer agonizing manual labor and primitive engineering. They use the grails to gather food to sustain a massive workforce. They fashion crude tools from shattered stones and whatever metal they can scavenge or synthesize, and they weave thick vines to lash the massive bamboo stalks together.
That sounds exhausting.
It takes years of organizing labor, navigating tribal politics, and utilizing Burton's charisma to build a functional vessel capable of navigating the currents.
So they build this massive bamboo ark, and they set off upstream. And as they travel, they are essentially sailing through a time-lapse of human sociology.
It's a tour of history.
Without central authority, they witness newly forming civilizations regressing into feudalism, warlord states, and tribal warfare. And as they sail right into the thick of this chaos, they run into arguably the darkest, most disturbing twist in the entire book.
Yeah.
Their boat is captured, and they're enslaved by a newly formed, highly organized kingdom.
Yes.
And who is running this kingdom? King Tullus Hostilius, a brutal ancient Roman monarch, and his co-ruler, Hermann Goering.
This is where Farmer truly tests the philosophical limits of his premise. Hermann Goering, the founder of the Gestapo, the commander of the Luftwaffe, one of the primary architects of the Holocaust, is resurrected just like everyone else.
Right.
He is given a perfectly healthy, youthful body, unlimited food, and a second chance. And what does he do with it? He immediately reverts to his earthly nature.
I have to stop and ask how that even happens.
Yeah.
How does a naked man on a riverbank, stripped of his military and his political party, managed to build a fascist state from scratch.
Because fascism doesn't require a specific uniform, it requires a specific psychology. Goering utilizes this innate, terrifying charisma, his understanding of mass psychology, and his sheer ruthlessness. He finds people who are terrified of the chaos of Riverworld, people who crave order at any cost.
So he preys on their fear.
Exactly. He leverages tribalism, promising safety to his in-group while brutally subjugating everyone else. He organizes a hierarchy of violence out of thin air. It shows that people will willingly surrender their freedom to a monster if the monster promises to protect them from the unknown.
It is horrifying. We usually apply the concept of a second chance to someone who made a mistake, someone who wants redemption. But Farmer forces us to look at the worst monsters in human history and says, yep, they are here too, and they haven't changed a bit. It poses a massive moral question. Why would a hyper-advanced alien race give someone like Goering a second chance?
Goering acts as the ultimate philosophical foil in the novel. He represents the absolute darkest aspects of human ambition and cruelty. By including him, Farmer is demonstrating that the resurrection of Riverworld is entirely agnostic to human morality.
It's completely neutral.
Yes. It wasn't a reward for the righteous. It wasn't a sorting of good and evil. It was a blanket operation. Goering's presence proves that the ethicals, whoever they are not operating on any human concept of justice, karma, or divine retribution. Their motives are purely observational, perhaps even cold and clinical.
And it forces our heroes into desperate action. Burton can't talk his way out of this, so he leads a violent slave revolt. It's messy, it's brutal, and in the chaos, it is actually Alice Hargreaves, the polite Victorian woman, the inspiration for Alice in Wonderland. She's the one who ends up killing Goering.
Which is an incredibly wild character arc.
Totally wild. After the revolt, the people elect Burton to their new ruling council. But Burton realizes he's getting bogged down. Governing a primitive, squabbling society is not his goal. The Dark Tower is his goal. But traveling by bamboo boat against the current of a 10-million-mile river will take thousands of years. He will never make it. So Burton does the math, looks at the absolute rules of the world, and adopts a travel method that is so grim, so dark, they call it the Suicide Express.
The Suicide Express is perhaps the most philosophically profound and deeply disturbing concept in the entire novel.
It really is.
The biological rules of Riverworld dictate that if you die, your physical body is dissolved by some unseen mechanism, and your consciousness instantly resurrects in a new body at a random point somewhere else along the river.
Right.
Burton realizes that statistically, given enough deaths, some of those random resurrections will place him further up the river, closer to the headwaters.
I am stuck on the math here, and the sheer horror of it. The river is 10 million miles long. Even if he gets a good random respawn, he could end up 1 million miles in the wrong direction. How is this a viable strategy? It sounds like playing the lottery by shooting yourself in the head.
Yeah.
And physically, how are they even doing it? They don't have firearms. They don't have skyscrapers to jump off.
It is a process of agonizing, primitive self-termination. They have to drown themselves in the river. They have to weave vines to hang themselves from the giant trees. They have to provoke others into killing them. And you are right about the math. It is a statistical nightmare. Burton might kill himself, wake up 10,000 miles downstream, realize he went backward, and immediately have to find a way to drown himself again.
It's unfathomable. You have to experience the physical agony of asphyxiation, the panic of your lungs filling with water, the terror of the unknown void, thousands upon thousands of times. But I have to challenge the narrative stakes here. If a character can just respawn whenever they get into trouble, doesn't this mechanic invalidate the struggle?
How do you mean?
Well, where is the dramatic tension if death is just a fast travel mechanic? Does human life even matter anymore?
What's fascinating here is that Farmer completely redefines what the struggle actually is. You're right, the struggle on Riverworld is no longer about biological survival. Survival is guaranteed by the ethicals. The struggle is now entirely about meaning. Yes, without a purpose, without a driving goal, eternal life on a riverbank with unlimited food isn't a paradise. It's a stagnant, endless purgatory. Burton's willingness to endure the psychological and physical trauma of dying over and over again on the Suicide Express proves that the quest for truth is the only thing giving his existence value.
So the suffering is the point, in a way.
Exactly. He completely severs himself from the sanctity of life. He turns his own body, his own life and death, into a mere vehicle to reach the architects of his reality.
It's the ultimate hack of the system. He's weaponizing the creator's own rules against them. And along this gruesome, repetitive journey of dying, waking up, checking the stars, and dying again, Burton's crew finally gets a massive piece of empirical proof that they are on the right track.
The captured agent.
Right. During one of their lifespan, they actually managed to capture an ethical agent. One of the beings the mysterious stranger warned them about, who was embedded among the normal humans. They capture him, the agent dies during the interrogation, and when Burton's team performs a crude autopsy, they find something hidden inside his head.
They discover a small, highly advanced technological implant deeply embedded in the agent's brain. This implant was designed to allow the agent to commit suicide instantaneously at will, ensuring they could escape capture or torture by simply respawning in a secure zone.
It's a literal kill switch.
Exactly. And this physical proof is the smoking gun Burton has been looking for. It removes any lingering philosophical doubt that Riverworld might be some natural cosmic phenomenon or a spiritual, metaphysical afterlife. It confirms definitively that humanity is actively being managed, monitored, and manipulated by a technologically superior physical force.
And this absolute certainty fuels the final push. After thousands of deaths on the Suicide Express, the climax of the book hits. Burton kills himself one last time, and when he opens his eyes, he isn't looking at a grassy bank. He is inside the dark tower at the absolute headwaters of the 10-million-mile river. He has finally reached the control room.
It is the ultimate moment of confronting the gods. Burton is brought before a council of the ethicals. And here, Farmer subverts all our theological expectations. We see that these beings are not the omnipotent, all-knowing, majestic deities that humans have traditionally worshipped.
Not at all.
They are essentially squabbling bureaucrats in robes. They are fallible, they argue amongst themselves, and clearly they have a massive security leak. They interrogate Burton, but not to judge his soul or weigh his sins. They just want to know the identity of the mysterious stranger, the rebel among their own ranks who gave Burton the inside information.
Which is just the ultimate letdown, isn't it? Imagine spending lifetimes, dying thousands of painful deaths to finally meet God. And when you get there, God is essentially a middle manager asking you to snitch on a rogue employee.
It's incredibly anticlimactic.
It completely demystifies the divine. But Burton, being the absolute stubborn, anti-authoritarian contrarian that he is, refuses. He will not give up the mysterious stranger. So the ethicals, who possess the power of life, death, and memory, tell Burton that his punishment is to have his mind wiped. They're going to erase his memories and send him back to the river as a blank slate.
Let's use an analogy for how terrifying this is. They aren't just killing his body, they are formatting the hard drive of his soul. His physical body will survive, he will walk and talk and eat, but the operating system that makes him Richard Francis Burton, his memories, his languages, his defiance, will be permanently uninstalled.
That's worse than death.
For a man whose entire identity is built on his experiences and his relentless pursuit of knowledge, a memory wipe is a true death of the self.
But just as they are about to format his mind, the mysterious stranger intervenes. He manages to hack the system, saving Burton from the memory wipe at the very last second, and casts him back out into the resurrection cycle, memory perfectly intact. And that is where the novel ends, on a massive, sprawling, unresolved cliffhanger.
He wakes up back on the riverbank, exactly where he started, but with his mind intact.
So what does this all mean? I have to voice what you, the listener, are probably screaming at your device right now. Wait, Farmer does all this incredible world building, creates this insane 10-million-mile river, introduces us to Neanderthals and alien apocalypses, makes us ride the Suicide Express, and just leaves us hanging at the Dark Tower without any actual answers.
It's a lot to process.
We don't learn the true purpose of Riverworld. We don't learn the true identity of the ethicals. We don't know the stranger's endgame. It's incredibly frustrating.
It is deeply frustrating from a purely plot-driven mystery box perspective. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the cliffhanger is actually structurally brilliant. The entire book is an exploration of the debate between free will and determinism.
Right.
Are these resurrected humans actually exercising free will, or are they just lab rats running an impossibly elaborate maze designed by alien gods?
Right, because if the ethicals built the maze, if they synthesized the food, and if they control the very mechanism of death, do the rats really have a choice in anything they do?
Exactly. And that is why the ending, despite lacking exposition, is a massive triumph for Burton. His victory wasn't in destroying the ethicals with a weapon. It wasn't in shutting down the Riverworld simulation. It wasn't even in getting all the answers. His victory was maintaining his memory, his defiance, and his free will against overwhelming cosmic odds.
He beat the system.
He preserved his ego. In a universe governed by fallible, bureaucratic deities, Farmer taps into this deeply human desire to look at a flawed creator, question their authority, and outright rebel. Burton's refusal to cooperate is the ultimate assertion of human agency.
It's the ultimate middle finger to the gods. You can kill me 1,000 times, you can trap me on a river, but you cannot have my secrets. My mind is mine. It makes for thrilling, rebellious philosophy. But as much as we love Burton's defiance and the sheer, breathtaking scale of this world, we have to step out of the Riverworld for a moment. We need to judge the vehicle that Farmer used to deliver these massive ideas. Because, let's be completely honest with ourselves, it was not a perfectly smooth ride. We need to talk about the glaring flaws of this masterpiece.
It's a necessary conversation. To Your Scattered Bodies Go is widely recognized as a classic of the genre, but it is also heavily criticized by literary scholars, and often rightfully so. First and foremost, let's look at the prose itself.
Yeah, the writing.
Critics frequently lambaste Farmer's writing style in this novel as clunky, pulpy, and decidedly unliterary. The narrative momentum is often severely bogged down by massive, dense info dumps, where the story simply grinds to a halt so Farmer can explain the mechanical history of a grail stone or the biographical history of a minor character.
Yeah, you can definitely feel its roots in the pulp magazines of the 1950s and 60s. It prioritizes high-concept ideas over poetic execution. And then there's the glaring issue of sexism, which is impossible to ignore for a modern reader.
Oh, absolutely.
We mentioned Alice Hargreaves earlier, the literal inspiration for Alice in Wonderland. You would think she'd have this incredibly rich, complex psychological arc, grappling with her fictionalized legacy. Instead, she is notoriously reduced for much of the book to a standard swooning love interest and is characterized multiple times by her, quote, splendid bust.
It's tough to read now.
It is a massive disservice to the character, and frankly, it pulls you right out of the philosophical high ground the book is trying to occupy.
It is a stark, unfortunate reminder of the era in which it was written and the heavily male-dominated sphere of science fiction publishing at the time. The treatment of women in the novel completely lacks the nuance, the agency, and the depth afforded to the male historical figures. And of course, as we just touched on, there is the widespread frustration over that cliffhanger ending, which many contemporary critics openly called a narrative cop-out.
They felt cheated.
They felt Farmer had bitten off more than he could chew, setting up cosmic mysteries he simply didn't know how to resolve in a single volume, forcing readers to buy the sequels.
Look at it this way. Reading this book is like watching a sci-fi movie that has absolutely incredible, groundbreaking special effects and a mind-blowing original concept, but a totally clunky script.
That's a great comparison.
You don't watch it for the poetic dialogue. You don't watch it for the nuanced romance. You watch it because literally no one else has ever built a visual, conceptual world quite like this. The sheer gravitational pull of Farmer's imagination just drags you past the bad dialogue and the awkward info dumps. The premise itself is the star of the show.
This raises an important question, one that literature scholars debate constantly. Do a novel's philosophical ambitions and its imaginative scope excuse its structural and prose flaws?
That's a tough call.
In the case of To Your Scattered Bodies Go, history seems to have answered with a definitive yes. Its Hugo Award win and its enduring, decades-long legacy prove that a breathtaking what-if scenario can cement a story in the science fiction pantheon forever. The ideas are so potent, the sandbox is so vast, that the mechanical execution, while undeniably flawed, becomes secondary to the intellectual thrill of the exploration.
It is a testament to the power of a truly great idea. And what a journey that idea has taken us on today. We've explored a 10-million-mile river winding across an alien world. We've debated the great man theory while watching a Victorian explorer, an ancient Roman king, and the architect of the Gestapo fight for control over naked, resurrected humanity.
A wild ride.
We broke down the horrifying logistics of the Suicide Express, turning death into a macabre transit system. And we reached the Dark Tower, only to find flawed, bureaucratic gods trying to cover their tracks. Farmer gave us a messy, pulpy, deeply cynical, yet undeniably fascinating sandbox that forces us to ask what we would really do if we were handed eternity.
He stripped away all the comforting illusions we have about civilization, about manners, and about progress, and asked us to look at the raw, unfiltered human animal. And by doing so, he created a mythos that is as provocative and unsettling today as it was in 1971.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to connect this back to you listening right now. While it is highly unlikely that you will be waking up hairless on a giant riverbank tomorrow morning with an alien replicator bucket in your hand, the core question at the heart of this book remains entirely relevant to your life right now.
Absolutely.
If you had all your basic needs met forever, If you never had to worry about rent or groceries or disease or even death, what would you choose to struggle for? What gives your life meaning when mere survival is no longer the goal?
It is the ultimate existential question. Without a mountain to climb, does the human spirit atrophy into boredom, or does it finally have the freedom to truly evolve?
We spent a lot of time today judging farmers' cynical view that humanity would just use endless life to be cruel to one another, to build primitive empires and fight over territory they don't even need. But before we go, consider the alien, Monad, the guy whose species accidentally wiped us out. If a hyper-advanced species resurrected us just to observe us, as the ethicals did, would our chaotic, violent behavior on Riverworld be the ultimate proof that humanity deserved its extinction?
No, that's dark.
Or is the brutal, unforgiving crucible of Riverworld the only environment harsh enough to finally force humanity to exhaust its demons, outgrow its violent past, and become something better? Think about that next time you find yourself stuck in a crowded room.